All right, UFC 330, full card predictions. We'll start with the early prelim opener, and we'll make our way to the main event of Islam Makhachev versus Ian Machado Garry. Let's get right into it. First fight of the card, you got Jeremiah Wells versus Mytykbek Orolbai. I'm going to go with Orolbai. He's a very good grappler. He's a very good striker, too. He's got, kind of nukes in his hands at welterweight so far. He had that knockout over Jack Hermanson, a pretty good decision over, what's his name? Chris Curtis. And then before that, at lightweight, he had a pretty good run of good fights and, showing some pretty good grappling. And I think that's how he's going to win this fight. Jeremiah Wells is a solid fighter, but he's not that good. He did beat Themba Grimmo in his last one, but before that, he was coming off 2 losses to Carlson Harris and to Max Griffin. Both, he looked rather unimpressive. And before that, he had a split decision with Matthew Semelsberger that he won, but he almost definitely should have lost. That was kind of a robbery. I just think Mytykbek Orolbai is going to have a pretty significant advantage in the grappling. Maybe not the wrestling. Jeremiah Wells is pretty strong. He's pretty stocky for the division. He's 5'9", so he's actually shorter than Mytykbek Orolbai, the former lightweight. But he is pretty strong for the division, so I can see that Orolbai might struggle with traditional takedowns, like a single leg or a double leg, specifically if he tries to shoot for a double leg and he doesn't have Wells against the fence, or if Wells has the fence to stand himself up. But I think that Orolbai has a pretty significant advantage in most of the other areas of the grappling. I think he can take the back pretty well. He can drag you down from the cage pretty well. And when he's on top, he's pretty good. He got a submission over to Tafik Musayev very early in that fight. He had a takedown right into a Kimura from on top. He got the tap right away. So Orolbai's pretty skilled when it comes to getting finishes on the ground. I think that he pretty easily gets one here. 99% of people on Tapology are picking Orolbai. Only 1% picking Wells. And Wells is strong and powerful. Like, there's a chance he could go out there and find a finish on the feet. The only problem is that he's done that once in the UFC, and it was 4 years ago against Court McGee. So I don't know if you want to count on him doing that again, especially against a guy like Orolbai, who's got a really good chin. Orolbai took some fucking punishment against Mateusz Rebecki, and that fight was still pretty close, and Orolbai never got finished. And he actually came back and ended up on top in the third round, and had a pretty good round for himself there, despite the fact that he basically got knocked out in that round. So I'm going to go with Orolbai, probably by an early submission. I could just see him not getting a takedown, but working his way to the fence, taking Jeremiah Wells back, getting a rear naked choke, maybe getting on top, getting an arm triangle or a Kimura or something like that, like a strength-based submission, but just being like the technically better grappler once you get to like the minutia. Like once you get to the actual grappling moments, whether scrambling or looking for position, I think Orolbai's better. But I can see Wells stuffing a takedown or two maybe. We saw Orolbai against Uros Medic in his debut. He took the fight on short notice. He did struggle to get like the takedowns against the fence. He kept shooting over and over again. He just couldn't get the he couldn't like routinely hold Medic down, but once he got him down and he was able to get good position, he immediately got the rear naked choke. And that fight was on short notice, up weight class. So I think he can do the same against a worse opponent with a full camp, especially once he's actually, this is like his third fight at welterweight now, so he's actually built into the division. Next fight of the card, weirdly, this is the first welterweight he's fighting since the Medic fight. He actually fought Chris Curtis and Jack Hermanson in his 2 welterweight fights, and they're both former middleweights, so kind of a weird thing there, but he gets to fight a welterweight here, and I think he wins it. Next fight of the card, Neil Magny versus Brahimaj. Even odds fight. I'm going to go with Brahimaj. I'm just a little bit more confident in his ability to kind of enact the game plan that he needs. I think the way the fight's going to go is that Brahimaj is going to look for a finish early, probably on the ground. I imagine he's going to shoot for takedowns, try to find the back, look for a rear naked choke or an arm triangle, kind of similar to what I said Orolbai would do, just like a strength-based submission from on top. He's got a good guillotine, so maybe if Magny ends up in a guillotine position, you can find that. But I don't really see that. I don't see Magny shooting and Brahimaj sprawling it. I don't see Magny like trying to get on top and giving up his neck. I generally just see Brahimaj going for takedowns, getting on top. And in Magny's recent career, he's basically been submitted almost in the first round in like every recent fight. The Alessi DeSantis fight, I'm pretty sure Alessi Zaleski had his back early in the first round. I know Yaroslav Amosov submitted him immediately in the first round in the first grappling exchange, and Jake Matthews had an in guillotine at the end of the first round, and Magny almost went out. He might have actually gone out, but Dan Murgliata stepped in with 3 seconds left in the round because he thought Magny went out, and then he realized Magny didn't go out, and he was like, just kidding, I wasn't stopping the fight, I was stopping the round. But there was still 3 seconds left in the round, so there's a very legitimate chance that Jake Matthews should have gotten a submission victory over Neil Magny in the first round of their fight. So I just don't like how Magny, I mean, before that he got knocked out by Carlos Prates in the first round, and before that he got knocked out by Michael Morales in the first round. I just don't really like how finishable Neil Magny is in the first round. I think that Brahimaj is a pretty good finisher. Almost all of his wins come by first round submission. Austin Vanderford, he got him with a guillotine. Billy Ray Goff, he got with a guillotine. He was a plus 400 underdog against Billy Ray Goff. And for some reason I picked Billy Goff, even though I said that Brahimaj should probably win. He finished Mickey Gall, I think, in the first round. I think it was early in that fight. Almost all of, what's his name? Ramiz Brahimaj, like, again, he finished Michael Gilmore by a first-round submission. He finished Sasha Platnikov by a first-round decision. He finished his last fight in LFA by a first-round submission. And almost all of his wins, or his losses, come later in the fight. His last 3 losses are decisions, one of them to Court McGee, which I don't love. But before that, he had that ear injury loss to Max Griffin. That was in the 3rd round. So in the first round, Brahimaj does pretty good. And later in the fight, he does pretty bad, which is kind of the opposite of Neil Magny. Neil Magny usually gets finished early, and if he doesn't get finished early, he'll win the fight later on. I just think that I trust Brahimaj's ability to get a finish early better than I trust Neil Magny's ability to get a finish later. And I definitely could see Brahimaj winning round 1 easily, and then having a close round 2 where he wins it. He's just a little bit like more powerful on the feet. He looks a little bit more like I don't know what you call it. Like, it just looks like it hurts more when he does shit. So I think Brahimaj pretty good path to victory here. I think the most likely outcome is he gets a first round submission, and then the second most likely outcome is that Neil Magny wins a decision. But I think there's a good chance that Brahimaj could still win a decision or get a finish later on. More likely that I see Magny like getting a finish in the 3rd round or something like that. So I'm going to go with Brahimaj. I just think like the sum of probabilities is in Brahimaj's favor when it comes to the way the fight can end. Next fight of the card, kind of a shitty fight, Rafael Tobias versus Lucas Fernando. I should remind you, this is not a pay-per-view, but it's still a numbered event. Like, this is in the series of pay-per-views that the UFC has done. It's kind of an ugly card, especially a couple of fights on the main card don't belong there. The bout order is really weird. Like, Orolbai should be on the main card, or at least like the feature prelim. But above him, you have Rafael Tobias versus Lucas Fernando. Like, I think this fight's going to be on CBS on, like, cable television, and the Orolbai fight won't, which is kind of weird. But I'm going to go with Lucas Fernando. I think they've had Rafael Tobias and Lucas Fernando, like, in the recent fights, even including Tobias's Dana White Contender Series fight and his, what do you call it? His UFC debut. I think he fought a pretty similar level of competition to Lucas Fernando. Fernando fought, like, a couple of pretty decent fighters in LFA. And I think that Fernando looked more like the, UFC level fighter. Against Dr. Nurgoje, Rafael Tobias looked pretty shit. He didn't look very good anywhere. He got out-grappled, he got outstruck. And against Jair de Oliveira, he fought on the Contender Series. That guy's not very good. So I think that, like, the competition Lucas Fernando fought, compared to the guy he fought in the Contender Series, Lucas Fernando fought better fighters and looked better. And then Rafael Tobias fought someone actually good that was UFC level, and he looked bad. So I'm going to go with Lucas Fernando. He just looks like more of a UFC level talent, whereas Tobias just looks like a pretty decent finisher who's green and young. So I'll go with Fernando. But by the way, I don't think either of these guys are any good. Next up the card is Vicente Luque versus Tresean Gore. I'm going to go with Tresean Gore. Luque, I don't know. It's kind of hard to know what to pick with him. After the, what fight was it? Was it the Jeff Neal fight where he got, like, brain damage? It was kind of hard to pick him. He looked good against RDA. He didn't look good against RDA. He took RDA to a pretty boring 5-round decision. But after that, he fought Joaquin Buckley, and it looked like a fighter that I'd never pick again. Like, he had a pretty boring first round where he didn't do a ton, and in the second round he just ended up on bottom, and Joaquin Buckley just started hitting him with the ground and pound from guard, and he just didn't react at all. He just let himself get TKO'd. And then he came back and he fought Tim McGrimbo, and he dropped him and submitted him in, a minute. And I'm like, oh, maybe he's back. And then he fought Kevin Holland and looked pretty bad and got submitted himself. And then he fought Joel Alvarez, and he had literally nothing for Joel Alvarez. Like, he just got taken down and held down and beat up. I don't even think he got taken down. I think he ended up on the ground and got beaten up for 3 rounds straight. And Alvarez just couldn't find the finish. And I was like, oh, maybe he's completely done. And then he fought Kelvin Gastelum, and he dropped him and submitted him. So I don't really know where he's at in his career. I'm just going to pick Tresean Gore because I'm a little bit more confident in where he's at. He looked really good in his last fight against Azamat Makhachev. Makhachev looked like shit, but Tresean Gore was doing the right things. His combinations looked pretty good. He looked pretty powerful. He looked like, the guy that he should be, like, as a powerful middleweight. I feel like he's been a little bit disrespected by his opponents. Like, Marco Tulio literally just walked down and beat up Tresean Gore for that whole fight. He did it for the whole first round, and then he finished him earlier on in the second round. And Tresean Gore was landing back, but Marco Tulio just had absolutely no respect for him, and ended up winning that fight by just walking him down. But in Tresean Gore's last fight, he finally got the respect from his opponent. He looked like his powerful shots were landing with power. He wasn't super easily out-grappled. He actually ended up getting a submission to win. So, I just think he looked pretty good in that fight, and I think that he's an actual middleweight. Vicente Luque isn't a big welterweight. He's just a guy that's too shop-worn to cut down to welterweight and reliably win. Maybe he's just trying to go up to a lower skilled weight class and find a couple wins there. But I think Tresean Gore is a decently skilled opponent who's got good power, who's well-rounded. I don't think Vicente Luque has an easy path to victory anywhere. And I think that's kind of what he needs to win the fight. Themba Grimbo is kind of vulnerable to getting hit. Not the best defensively, not super well-rounded. What's his name? Kelvin Gastelum is super washed and doesn't cut weight anymore. And it's kind of a, kind of a bum. So I'm going to pick Tresean Gore. I don't think Luque has it anymore. I think he is pretty washed. But I think a lot of his wins are coming from reliable paths to victory against flawed opponents. Whereas I don't think Tresean Gore is super flawed, especially if you're not that much bigger than him. And Tresean Gore is pretty small for a middleweight as far as his frame. He's only 6 foot. A lot of the other middleweights he's fought are 6'2", 6'3", taller, bigger, stronger. Whereas Tresean Gore is going to be the bigger opponent in this fight, or the bigger fighter in this fight, and I think that'll be pretty good for him. I will say, I thought Tresean Gore was younger in that I thought he was about 28, 29, 30, something like that. He's 32, and Vicente Luque is 34. Vicente Luque is only 2 years older than Tresean Gore, which is kind of shocking. I would have, they were in high school at the same time as each other, which is kind of weird. I would have thought that Vicente Luque is 10 years older, but he's only 2, so a little weird. But I'll pick Tresean Gore. I think it's not an age thing. It's more of a fight, how much damage you've taken in your career thing. Vicente Luque used to be good for a war on any night, and I don't think he's quite there anymore. So I'm going to pick Tresean Gore. Next fight of the card, Donte Johnson versus Eric McConico. I'm going to pick Donte Johnson. I know he's got kind of a goofy style, but he is kind of well-rounded. He does have good grappling. He's got good submissions. It seems like he's very strong in his submissions. He got maybe Cedric Dumas as a quitter, but he got Cedric Dumas in this guillotine, and Dumas immediately tapped, didn't even try to fight it, which tells me that I'm pretty sure the guy named Lockjaw has pretty good squeeze on his chokes. And Eric McConico is kind of just a bullyable fighter. He put up a decent fight against Baisengor Susukaev, but when Susukaev needed the finish, he just went out there and got the finish. It wasn't really that difficult. Kind of a similar thing with Nursultan Ruzboyev. Nursultan Ruzboyev, just when he needed the finish, he just went out there and found it. And Eric McConico has a decent ability at being well-rounded and being good at point fighting against fighters who have no finishing ability, like a Rodolfo Vieira or a Cody Brundage. But if someone wants to go out and finish him, they kind of can. And I think that Donte Johnson is skilled enough to go out there and get a finish. And I think that's just what he's going to do. I think maybe it'll be a close first round or two. Well, maybe not, because Donte Johnson does tend to gas. So I don't know if he'll get a late finish. But I think if he needs a finish early on, if he starts to feel like he's getting behind in the fight, he can go out there, whip up a head kick or throw a big combination on the inside. And I think he can find that big shot to drop and finish Eric McConico. And if he drops him and he doesn't finish him, I think he can pull a guillotine or something like that and find a finish. So I think Donte Johnson should win this. Next fight of the card, Charles Johnson versus Eduardo Chapolin. This was originally the featured fight on this card. It was Charles Johnson versus Jose Ochoa, and I'm kind of pissed it got canceled because Jose Ochoa is one of my favorite flyweights on the entire roster. But Charles Johnson, very entertaining fighter. Usually got a pretty good scrap over the distance. He's got really good cardio. He's got finishing ability throughout the fight. Eduardo Chapolin, not a bad fighter. He fought Antoine Ho on the Contender Series and won. I'm pretty sure as an underdog. Antoine Ho is pretty good. He was a touted prospect. I think a lot of people thought he was going to win and get signed to the UFC. So Eduardo Chapolin beating him is a pretty good win. I don't know if he's the champion, but he's fought a lot of good flyweights at LFA. And LFA does have a lot of decent prospects now. It's probably the best American regional promotion. I think. I feel like it's maybe CFFC is better. But yeah, it's probably, now it's LFA is probably the premier American regional promotion. And Eduardo Chapolin is one of the best flyweights in that promotion. So he's a pretty solid fighter. And he's got to win over a pretty solid opponent. I just think that on short notice, Charles Johnson, he's got very good cardio. He's going to punish you if your cardio isn't good. He did that to Loner Kavanaugh, who's a very good fighter. He did it to Joshua Van, who's a very good fighter. Loner Kavanaugh didn't have a very good gas tank, and he's kind of vulnerable to getting hit in the body. So Charles Johnson just made him slow down by hitting him in the body over and over again. Eventually, Kavanaugh slowed down, and Charles Johnson found a big left hook, knocked him out. And then Joshua Van, his defense got a little bit sloppier as he slowed down, and Charles Johnson put a hell of a pace on him, and eventually he found a big shot, rocked Joshua Van, and then he put him out while he's rocked. And I think he can do a similar thing to Chapolin. Chapolin is a good fighter, but I can see him slowing down over the course of the fight. He's a pretty muscle-bound and powerful for a flyweight, so I could see him slowing down, and I could see Charles Johnson getting a late finish. But I think the most likely result is that he plays it safe. He has been hurt in his last couple fights. Almabayev didn't really hurt him, but he did ended up submitting him in that fight. And then Alex Perez did rock him and drop him. Bruno Silva hurt him a couple times in that fight, and maybe Charles Johnson should have lost that decision. And then Ramiz and Tamarov also, he didn't really hurt him, but he did a good job of like keeping him off him and landing the bigger shots. And I think Charles Johnson's probably going to try to avoid that. So I can see him fighting a good game plan here and just getting a late finish or a clear decision win based on the last couple rounds. Because Chapolin is dangerous, but I think Charles Johnson is good at taking advantage of dangerous flyweights. Next fight at the card, Chidi and Njokuani versus Joel Alvarez. I'm going to go with Alvarez. I'm a little reluctant because I don't really know a super clear path to victory for Joel Alvarez. I just think he's a little bit more skilled. What I don't like about Joel Alvarez's game is that a lot of his game comes off like taking advantage of pretty severe mistakes by his opponent. Like when he, trying to think, what fight's a good example? Kind of like the Mark Chikadze fight. Like he submitted Mark Chikadze because Chikadze was trying to grapple with him, not because he, out-grappled Chikadze. Like he didn't take him down, Chikadze forced grappling and he got punished for it. The Yakovlev fight, kind of a similar thing. Like Yakovlev didn't get taken down in that fight. He just ended up on the ground and got finished. Same with Joe Duffy. Same with Danilo Belluardo. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if Joel Alvarez has ever taken down an opponent. I feel like he might have, but his recent run, or his later run at lightweight, he was finishing a lot of his opponents on the feet. He finished Thiago Moises, he finished Elvis Brenner, he finished Drakkar Klose. But a lot of his best game is like fighting off his back and using his elbows and his length. And he won't have that length advantage in this fight because him and Njokuani are the same height, and Njokuani has longer reach. I also think Njokuani has longer legs, so I like the reach advantage, especially like even in the grappling moments, like when Joel Alvarez is on his back, he's not going to have the advantage of being the super lanky guy with long legs. So I don't really know where Alvarez's advantages are going to lie. I think he's a little bit more technical on the feet. I feel like he also is a little bit more powerful. He tends to hurt his opponents, which is weird because I feel like Njokuani does look like his knees are powerful. He does look like his elbows are powerful, but he almost never finishes anyone on the feet. Did he finish Jared Gooden? Let me see. He didn't. He didn't even finish Jared Gooden. Jared Gooden is very finishable on the feet. He finished Alessio Zaleski dos Santos in a pretty impressive finish with knees and elbows in the clinch. Couldn't finish Jared Gooden, who he was really beating up. Went to a close decision with Reese McKee, and he had a couple moments in that fight where he had Reese McKee hurt with weapons in the clinch, and he never finished him. And then Jake Matthews, he got in the clinch, immediately took Chidi Njokuani's back by just having better jiu-jitsu and submitted him. And I can see Joel Alvarez doing that. I think he does have a pretty significant jiu-jitsu advantage. The wrestling might be, comparable, but I think Alvarez has better jiu-jitsu. And I know Njokuani likes to work out of the clinch, but if you throw a knee in the clinch against a guy who wants to take you down, the guy can just grab your knee and bundle you over. And I think he might be able to do that. So, I just think that Alvarez a little bit better of a finisher on the feet, a lot better of a finisher on the grappling. But Njokuani, I could definitely see him keeping Alvarez at distance, using his length, taking advantage of some tall man defense, and winning by decision. But I just think Alvarez is good enough finisher. He'll find the finish at some point in the fight. Njokuani isn't some amazing fighter. He's just a pretty solid striker with really good clinch work. And I think Alvarez is above that, despite the fact that he hasn't been super impressive at welterweight so far. He's 1-1. His only win was against Vicente Luque, who put up literally no resistance, and he still couldn't finish him. And Yaroslav Amosov out-grappled him for a full round, and then took him down and submitted him, I think, right away in round 2. So Alvarez is good, but his only losses are to Yaroslav Amosov and Arman Tsarukyan, who are two of the best prospects at their respective weight class. So I could see Alvarez, being a legitimate contender, but I do need to see him look pretty good in this fight. But I'll pick him. I think he's a good enough finisher. Next fight of the card, Edson Barboza versus Esteban Ribovics. I'm gonna go with Esteban Ribovics. Not a super hard fight to pick. Edson Barboza has been out-volumed by, Drakkar Klose, who's not super good, not nearly as good as Esteban Ribovics. He also got pretty easily, beaten up on the feet by Jalin Turner. I think Jalin Turner is a much better finisher on the feet than Esteban Ribovics, so I don't think Ribovics is going to get an easy finish. But the Jakar Close fight, Jakar Close just out-volumed Edson Barboza, and Jakar Close sucks at out-voluming people. Like, he's not very good at basic striking in the way that Esteban Ribovics is. So I think Ribovics can just beat him up on the feet over the course of 3 rounds. I don't think he'll get a finish, but I think he can win by easily out-voluming him. He'll probably get cracked at some point because Ribovics likes to be vulnerable while he's striking. But even in fights where he gets hurt, he still often wins. The Elvis Brenner fight, he got cracked a couple times, still won a dominant decision. The Daniel Zahuber fight, he did get hurt a couple times, caught with a couple short elbows, but he still won that fight. And then the Nasrat fight, he should have won that fight even though he got cracked a couple times, I think. So I think he's got a good path to victory there. Yeah, I'll pick him. Next fight of the card, Mansur Abdul Malik versus Dustin Stoltzfus. I'm going to pick Abdul Malik. He didn't look very good in his last fight, and I think he got pushed up not the rankings, but like the level of competition, kind of for no reason. He had a very unimpressive fight against Cody Brundage, which ended up getting overturned to, well, it's kind of a dumb thing. Round 1 and 2, they split, so Brundage won one, Abdul Malik won the other. The third round, Abdul Malik is like, fuck, I might be down on the scorecards, so I'm going to go for a finish. He goes to push for a finish. Instead of getting a finish, he just headbutts Cody Brundage on the chin, drops him with a headbutt, and then finishes him with the ground and pound. And that was like 90 seconds into the round. And for some reason, the Georgia Athletic Commission is like, okay, well, we don't want it to be a no contest, and there was an illegal strike in the finishing sequence. So instead of just giving a DQ to Abdul Malik, because it was incidental, let's just go to the decision, and we'll count the third round as one of the rounds. So 1 round went to Brundage, 1 round went to Abdul Malik from the first two, and then because round 3 was just a headbutt and then a finishing sequence from Abdul Malik, they gave Abdul Malik the third round. And then like 2 weeks later, like, okay, that was a mistake. We'll go to the decision, a draw. So they just scored it based on the first 2 rounds. Abdul Malik, he's pretty solid. He's a pretty dangerous finisher. He's pretty explosive. He's pretty big for the weight class. Dustin Stoltzfus generally struggles with that type of opponent. The Sultan Ruzaboa fight, he was winning a lot of the exchanges in the feet, but at one point every round he would just get smacked by a giant kick. I think he got caught with like 2 wheel kicks in that fight that knocked him over. So it's just kind of like an impact difference. Like he was landing a similar level of strike per round to Ruzaboev, but Ruzaboev would just hit him with something so impactful that it would like literally knock him off the feet, and clearly won a decision by doing that in like every round. And I think Abdul Malik is like similarly capable. He's got long 1-2s, he's got decent kicks, he's pretty powerful, his combinations aren't super bad. I could see him getting on the inside and looking for a big punch, and I can also see him getting a finish. Stoltzfus is susceptible to just getting finished by powerful fighters. Bruno Ferreira knocked him out with a spinning elbow. Ibis Magomedov, I'm pretty sure, knocked him out with a front kick. Dropped him with a front kick and then went on to finish him. Let me double check that. Ibis Magomedov dropped him and finished him in 20 seconds. And I think that Abdul Malik is, like I said, similarly capable to those dangerous fighters. So I'll pick him, despite the fact that I don't think he's like an exceptional fighter. And Stoltzfus might be like Stoltzfus might be a decent underdog. I think he's the technically better fighter, and Abdul Malik was super low volume against Cody Brundage. And if he does that against Stoltzfus, I think Stoltzfus would win. But if he fights like he did in any other fight, I think Abdul Malik gets the win. So I'll pick him. Next fight of the card, the featured fight. I want to say the only fight on this card. No, there's no one ranked in this fight. So yeah, the only ranked fighters on this card are the 4 fighters in the main event and the co-main event. Kind of ridiculous. But we got Jalin Turner versus Kaue Fernandez. I'm going to go with Jalin Turner. Kaue Fernandez is good, and I think he might have an advantage over the course of the fight in just being the better technical striker. But I think Jalin Turner, 1, looked very, very good in his last fight coming back from his retirement, and 2, is very liable to get a finish on the feet. I just think he's a pretty good finisher. He's very powerful. We saw that against Bobby Green. He dropped him and almost killed him on the ground with completely unnecessary ground and pound because of fucking Kerry Hatley, I think was the ref. And then he's just historically a pretty good finisher, or a pretty powerful striker, and he is pretty technical. Jalin Turner's shortcomings come from a couple lapses in judgment per fight, and then his submission grappling defense is pretty poor. He got put in a triangle. He took down Ignacio Bahamondes and then just stuck his head in a triangle and got submitted. Against Renato Moicano, he hurt him to the body like early in the first round, and at the end of the first round he dropped him, and then he didn't follow up. And because he didn't follow up, Moicano survived to the end of the round, came back in round 2, took him down and beat him up on the ground. So my main thing I worry about with Jalin Turner is his lack of grappling defense. I just really don't think he's that good defending on the ground. But I think he's going to be a slightly less technical fighter on the feet who is much more powerful and much more likely to like throw with intent to find a finish. He likes to get in the pocket and throw combinations, whereas Kaue Fernandez is much more of like a kicker at range. And I think Jalin Turner, because of his size, being 6'3" at lightweight, much bigger than a lot of the opponents Kaue Fernandez is going to have fought throughout his lightweight career. I think he's a lot more liable to punish someone who's throwing kicks. Because Kaue Fernandez is probably used to being 1 or 2 inches shorter, or maybe around the same height as his opponent. So if he's throwing like teeps and long kicks, there's not much his opponent could do about it as far as like closing the distance and countering. But Jalin Turner is 6'3" with a 75-inch reach. I think he can go out there and punish some lazy kicks. And I think that's what he's going to do. I think he's going to find a finish countering off of like a low kick, in the first or second round. So yeah, I'll pick Jalin Turner. But I think Kaue Fernandez could, teep and leg kick his way to a decision win, or maybe take Jalin Turner down and submit him. But I think in most like reasonable outcomes of this fight, Jalin Turner finds a couple big punches and maybe wins by a couple knockdowns in 2 rounds he gets a knockdown, or I think he gets a finish. Co-main event, Mackenzie Dern versus Jillian Robertson. I'm picking Dern. I just think she's a little bit better of a striker on the feet, and I think she's good enough that like no one's going to be able to take her down and hold her down or submit her. Against Verna Jandiroba was so like intent on holding down or taking down and holding down Mackenzie Dern that she just got out-volumed in the moments on the ground. She would take down Dern, and then in the guard she would get double underhooks, and Dern would just posture, like frame off with her left hand and throw elbows with her right hand, and she was winning those moments in the grappling. So because Dern is like so hard to take down or hold down and out-grapple or submit, I don't think Jillian Robertson can really do either of those things. And I think Dern might win a lot of the moments in the grappling. And on the feet, Jillian Robertson has like basically no power and has like very little technique. If you watch her older fights in the UFC where she spent less time grappling and more time striking, she looked really, really bad, and like she'd never fight in a title fight. And I think that similar to Verna Jandiroba looked unstoppable on the ground against everyone she fought until she fought Dern. Then she looked kind of clueless on the ground and like very clueless on the feet. And Dern didn't even look good on the feet. She just threw with conviction. So when Dern has to fight someone who can stuff her takedowns and like fight her on the feet, like Amanda Lemos or like Jessica Andrade, she gets her ass kicked. But when it's in her domain, when the other opponent has to take her down or hold her down, she can prevent that. Her wrestling has actually gotten pretty good. I mean, if you watch the Amanda Ribas fight, Mackenzie Dern's wrestling is way better than it used to be. If you watch like the first Amanda Ribas fight versus the second, Dern is like clearly a way better wrestler in the second fight than the first. I think her wrestling's improved a lot. So I think she's going to be able to stuff a lot of takedowns. Her submissions from scrambles and from her back are pretty good. And I think they're a good enough threat that, like I said, Jillian Robertson's not going to be easily out-grapple her at any moment in the fight. And Jillian Robertson is a pretty shitty striker. So I think Dern, she's got a decent jab. She's willing to throw her jab into combinations, and she's willing to throw outside low kicks and step-up low kicks. And I really think that's all you need to beat Jillian Robertson on the feet. So as long as Dern can just avoid getting taken down over and over again, that's genuinely, I think, the only way Robertson can win, is if she just takes down Dern and then Dern gets up and she takes down Dern and just over and over without getting punished by getting elbowed off the back or getting put in submissions. I think that's the only way she can win, is if she just like uses cardio and like volume grappling. But I think Dern has a lot more like reasonable ways to victory than Robertson. So I'll pick her. On to the main event, Islam Makhachev versus Ian Garry. I went back and forth on this. I've been pretty confident in picking Islam because I just think he's probably the best fighter that's ever fought. But Ian Garry, I feel like, is a pretty decent matchup. I'm going to go with Islam, but I'll go through the ways I think Ian Garry can win, and then I'll talk about why I think Islam will win. The main thing is Ian Garry has pretty good takedown defense, but more importantly, like really good footwork and really good distance management. And it's going to be in the big cage, not the apex, so he's got that little advantage there, as opposed to like a couple of fights he's had in the apex. But he's got really good distance management, and I think his takedown defense is good enough, and his distance management is good enough that I think he's going to be able to kick Islam Makhachev pretty reliably without like worrying about getting taken down over and over again. And that really hasn't happened for Islam yet. The only fighter who's kicked back and forth with him even a little bit was Volkanovski, and even then Volkanovski threw a lot less kicks against Islam than he did against like a Max Holloway or like a Korean Zombie. So I think a lot of what Islam's game plan is he fights to avoid the boxing exchanges, but to engage in the striking at like more of a distance way. He throws long jabs. He throws good kicks. He kicks to the legs. He kicks to the body. Kicks to the head. And Ian Garry kind of does a similar thing. But because Ian Garry is much longer, and he's got pretty good takedown defense and distance management, I think he's going to be able to avoid a lot of like what prevented Volkanovski and JDM and Charles Oliveira from throwing kicks. So yeah, I think he'll be able to kick pretty well, which no one's been able to do against Islam before. His striking is decent. He's not super powerful. He's not super good off the back foot. And I think he doesn't do super well under pressure, which is the main reason I'm going to pick Islam. Ian Garry does fight well off the back foot, but if you think about how his fights have gone off the back foot, when he fought Carlos Prates would walk towards him and throw nothing because he was afraid of getting countered. And then once Prates would start walking backwards himself, that's when Ian Garry would punish him. It wasn't countering off the back foot. Even in the fight where Ian Garry got like a step back knockout against, Jordan Williams, that was after an entire round of him just walking back and getting punished while walking back. Like Jordan Williams would feint or throw a combination, make Ian Garry back up and then kick him on the way back, stuff like that. Where Ian Garry got punished over and over and over again for walking backwards. And then finally, after a full round of getting punished, he finds the big shot and gets a finish. But I don't think he'll be able to easily get that against Islam. And I think Islam will do a lot better when he has him under pressure. Plus, he has the takedown threat. I think if Islam ever gets Ian Garry backed up against the fence, the takedown threat is going to be there. It was there routinely against Shavkat. Shavkat had a pretty similar game plan to Carlos Prates, where he didn't want to get countered off the back foot, or off Ian Garry's back foot, but he did want to like routinely back Ian Garry up against the fence. And Prates didn't have the ability to just duck into the clinch and like go for a takedown to, break up the rhythm and like give Ian Garry something to worry about. So Prates would back Ian Garry up to the fence, not throw anything, and then back up himself and get countered, or try to throw off the back foot and get countered. Whereas Shavkat could back him up against the fence, show a feint, shoot for a takedown, hold him against the fence, land some knees in the clinch, go for a takedown, try to get the back, stuff like that, which is a lot more of what Islam Makhachev's game plans are than like Carlos Prates. So because of that, I think that Ian Garry can look kind of weak off the back foot. Against Jeff Neal backed him up over and over again, and Ian Garry was like reluctant to throw, and that was only a 3-round fight. So because it was kind of low volume, and Jeff Neal landed a couple strikes while Ian Garry was backing up, the fight was like pretty close, and it was arguably like should have been or could have been a decision for Jeff Neal. So I think a lot of people saw the Carlos Prates fight, and it was a very good fight from Ian Garry. And I think a lot of it, what worked well was that a lot of the fight was in opposite stance, and Ian Garry could regularly kick towards Carlos Prates, which is going to be in this fight. I don't think the grappling will be super competitive. I think that's the main thing. Shavkat, his takedown entries have never been that good. Most of what he does is he gets into the clinch, and then from the clinch he slowly advances position towards the back, and then he'll drag you to the ground and try to jump on your back, or he'll drag you to the ground and try to like get on top of you in a scramble. And I think that can work against a lot of fighters, but I think that specifically Ian Garry is going to be good at resisting that. He has a judo background. A lot of his takedowns, a lot of his grappling is best from the clinch. And that's where Shavkat tried to do all of his game planning. So when Shavkat got to the clinch and where he had an advantage over like a Wonder Boy or like a Jeff Neal, both of whom he submitted from the clinch. Jeff Neal, he just got a standing rear naked choke, and Wonder Boy took him down from the clinch, got on top and submitted him. I don't think he was going to be able to do that as well against Ian Garry, whereas Islam Makhachev doesn't fight strictly out of the clinch. He'll shoot into the clinch a lot, but a lot of his best takedowns, like against Dustin Poirier, against JDM, were him just shooting really good entries, really well-timed single legs, where he gets really high on a high crotch, and then he has the whole Daniel Cormier, Dagestani, like Team AKA, single leg routine where they run the pipe, they do, all the, whatever the fucking names are. You've heard DC talk about them a ton on commentary. But that style of grappling, I think, will work a lot better against a long, like, lankier opponent. You saw DC use those takedowns a ton against, Alexander Gustafsson, taller fighters like that. He did it at heavyweight against Stipe Miocic. So even like against much bigger fighters, those takedown entries still really work. And if Ian Garry's going to lift up his lead leg to go for teeps to the leg, or teeps to the body, or lead head kicks like he did against Carlos Prates, those kicks can be caught, turned into single legs, and get him taken down. And when he got taken down, I don't think he looked super good against Shavkat. He did end up getting the back in the 5th round when Shavkat had slowed down a ton. But a lot of the moments in the grappling, especially on the ground, I don't think he looks super good. I don't think his grappling instincts are nearly as good as a lot of people give him credit for. He did out-grapple MVP, but MVP is terrible at grappling. And also, I think that the what I've seen that I think a lot of people are ignoring is if you watch the I think it was in the 5th round against Carlos Prates, it was whatever moment where Prates hurt him bad and almost finished him ground and pound. Look at what Garry is doing while he's on the ground. He's completely in panic mode, like giving himself up in the worst position. He's dropping to his back. He's giving up his back. He's giving up like ground and pound positions. He's just like completely in survival mode. He didn't even really get rocked that bad. He just got kind of like forced to the ground and then hit with a couple ground and pound shots. And his grappling instincts when he was in survival mode were completely like panic. I mean, I guess, or I understand that like Prates is not nearly the grappler that that Islam is, so you don't have to worry about those grappling moments nearly as much. But if he ever ends up in panic mode, his like survival instincts were terrible. So I think that'll probably be the same, or maybe probably not as bad, but I think he'll probably end up in some bad positions against Islam, and I think that his like lack of survival instincts will lead to him potentially getting finished, or at least putting it in a bad enough position that he's going to have to be worrying about it in the next round. I think that's what a lot of the JDM fight was. Islam landed a couple hard low kicks that kind of demoralized JDM on the feet, and then JDM's game plan was like building up off the ground, but Islam's submission offense was so good that JDM had to constantly worry about that, and it forced him to just be very reluctant and keeping himself on the bottom. And I think that Garry can find himself in a similar situation where he almost gets finished, and then he's like, fuck that, I'm never going there again, and that leads to him getting held down easily or put in other worse positions. And kind of the main reason I'm going to pick Islam is that we saw this the most in the JDM fight, is that he was very exciting. He looked for the finish a lot when he was on the way up, but as soon as he got the belt, he said, fuck this. If I need to take someone down or hold them down, I'm going to do it. And he did that for 5 rounds against JDM. He did it a couple times against Volkanovski. Yeah, I think he's just willing to take down and hold, kind of like Khamzat was against DDP. So yeah, I think that might be the way he wins the fight. I think that Islam will probably do worse on the feet than he has before, but better in the grappling than I think people expect him to. And because of that, I'm going to pick him. I'm going to say by decision because I think he's just so willing to take down and hold down. And he never really got stood up against JDM or anything. But yeah, I think Garry has a good chance, but he needs to keep the fight on the feet, and I think Islam is too good for that. You can't make your game plan keep the fight on the feet against, probably a top 3 grappler in the sport's history. So yeah, I'm going to go with Islam Makhachev. Let me know if you agree or disagree with the picks. I'll try to get my Contender Series predictions up, maybe Sunday or Monday or something like that. But yeah, let me know what you thought of the picks. Like the video, share the video, subscribe if you want to see more. I've got Contender Series predictions from last week. I've got recaps and predictions going back to the beginning of last year. You can follow me on Twitter, links in the description. I'll be live tweeting the event and the rest of the combat sports from this week. Yeah, subscribe and thank you for listening.